Today on Passion for Food, barbecue pulled pork. Over the years, I've made a couple of changes to the way I make these. Not only will it cook a lot faster, but we'll get a lot more of that smoky flavor into the meat. So let's get started. And first up here, we need to make our spice rub. Now you can just buy spice rubs, but especially if you have the spices, it's more flavorful and fun if we make it ourselves. And instead of a pre-packaged chili powder, I decided to grind some of my own, so I have some dried Mexican guajillo peppers here that I'm just going to cut up with some scissors into a coffee grinder. And you may have noticed I left the seeds in there. I want to retain any heat that they might bring along with them. And in addition, we have some paprika, along with more or less equal parts onion powder and garlic powder, along with some cumin, sugar, and our secret ingredient, a little bit of cinnamon. That's just going to add some complexity in the background. And in with our cayenne, and finally, of course, some salt. And that's it. We just need to mix this up. I don't generally measure any of the amounts here, but I will give you guys some estimates on the blog. Now, here's where things get a little interesting. To get more surface area, thereby allowing it to cook faster and give us more of that crust on the outside that really has the best flavor, I'm actually going to cut a pretty deep crosshatch pattern into this. And that will also have the added benefit of allowing the smoke to penetrate deeper into the meat. As you're making your cuts here, make sure not to go more than halfway through, because we are going to be making these cuts on both sides, so you don't want to accidentally cut through and then wind up having this fall apart on you. These do have part of that shoulder bone in them, but it doesn't run through the whole piece, so you can't rely on that to save you from cutting too deeply. I actually worried once I got finished here that I'd cut a little too deep on this underside, but everything worked out just fine. And now that we have that nicely opened up, we go in with our dry rub. So we just want to work that in here, making sure we get it in between all these little segments. And once that looks good, we just repeat it on the other side. That bit of bone was pretty close to the surface here on one side, so some of my cuts weren't able to be that deep, but that's okay. And once we get the dry rub worked in here, I do like to make sure I'm also seasoning the sides and the top. I don't like any blank spaces there. And with that, our pork is ready. I do like to get this all seasoned up before I actually start the grill. That just gives all of these flavors time to marry together. All right, let's get this thing onto the grill. It'll be great. I mean, really, we'll be smoking in no time. Now, you could do this with a gas grill as long as it has the capacity to add smoke somehow. But if you don't have a grill or a smoker, you can just cook this the whole time in the oven. It'll come out just fine that way, just a little less smoky, obviously. In the middle of our grill, we want a pan to catch any drippings from our pork, and that hot water is going to add steam. The added humidity is actually going to help the smoke penetrate our pork a little better. Now, our meat is going to be on here for a long time, so we're going to go with the indirect heat method, banking up the coals on either side. The pan actually helps us keep things orderly. And on either side, I'm going to lay in 4 or 5 unlit briquettes. They are going to catch as we're cooking, and that'll help extend the overall burn time for our grill. The plan here is to actually only open the grill once to add in one more batch of wood chips during the smoking process. And as for the smoke, I really feel like hickory is the only way to go. If you're a fan of mesquite, that's okay. I won't judge you too much. You do want to soak your wood chips in a little bit of water before you use them. That just helps them to smolder and smoke and not simply catch fire immediately. Even so, once the wood chips go on, things get lively pretty quickly, so let's go on with our grill grate, and it's time to get the meat on the grill. I also snuck a digital probe in there just so I can monitor the temperature. You want to make sure the probe is not directly over the charcoal. That will give you a falsely high reading. And on with the lid. We're going to need to adjust the vents on our grill. We really can't let this get too hot. We're looking for somewhere between 250 and 300 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're using charcoal like I am, it can take a little bit of practice to be able to lower the heat without accidentally smothering the charcoal. Mine started out a little hot here, but after about 20 minutes I was able to keep the heat pretty stable and it had stopped smoking, so it's time to add our second batch of wood chips. This is going to be the last time we open the grill before we're ready to finally pull this off and head into the oven. Now, once we close this grill, we will not open it again until we can no longer maintain at least 250 degrees inside the grill. Now, the amount of time that the grill is going to burn will vary. In this particular case, I was able to keep the grill hot for quite a while. The pork spent a total of 3 hours smoking on the grill. And here's what it's looking like after 3 hours. We can see we've got that crust well developed here, and because of that crosshatch that we cut into it, the smoke has penetrated much deeper than it could have otherwise. And then it's off to part 2 of the cooking process. So all we're going to do here is pretty much simulate that same environment inside the oven. So I'm going with a large roasting pan here, and I'm going to fill the bottom of that with some boiling water. And then we're going to go into a 250 degree oven for about another 2 hours. So that's going to give us a total of about 5 hours of total cooking, 3 hours at around 300 and then another 2 at 250. Our pork roast was about 8 pounds, so the times would have to be adjusted if it was a little bigger or a little smaller, of course. The nice thing about this particular method, though, is that we won't ever have to adjust the grill time because we're always just going to let the grill burn completely out. So the only times we ever have to adjust are the times it spends in the oven, which are the easy times to adjust. As we can see here, it's cooked down and rendered quite a bit more. And the best way to tell if it's ready to come out of the oven is just to stick a fork in and see if you can pull it apart. It is pulled pork after all. And I was satisfied with what I was seeing here, so it's off to the actual pulling of the pulled pork. And we want to let it sit and rest at least 15 or 20 minutes. I probably could have let mine rest a little longer, honestly. It was still quite hot. And apart from it being fork tender, the other easy way to tell if it's fully cooked the way we want is if we can slide this shoulder bone out without much resistance, and as you can see, out it comes. And the classic tools here, of course, are just 2 forks to shred this up, but I really prefer using my hands. Which would have been fine if I'd let this rest just a little bit longer, but it was still kind of hot in the middle, so we're going to go with the forks here after all. And there are no right or wrong answers here in terms of how finely to shred this up, so just shred it the way you like it. And that's it, we're finished. So there you have it. That's my little hack for getting a perfectly smoked pulled pork in far less time. I would say the normal cook time would probably have been 8 or 9 hours, but we got ours finished in 5 thanks to that handy crosshatch pattern we cut into the meat. And just as a little bonus, check out this quick and easy barbecue sauce recipe. I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing for updates on our weekly videos. This has been Graham for Passion for Food.